To our listeners, thank you so much for tuning in into another episode of the Silicon Oasis Spotlight. Today I have and am joyed to have with me
Katarina Lujic.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. What are you building, Katarina?
Ooh, thanks for that question. Great one.
Yeah, just right into it, right?
I'm building a revenue operations advisory firm here in Phoenix, and my goal is to bring the $1 million ops resources that VC-backed startups get to the startups just getting started here in Phoenix and in the United States as a whole. I've been loving it, super thrilled to be here. I just started about 4 months ago, so it's been really exciting.
Thank you so much for sharing. And it's really cool to hear that you're building that here, because we've had previous discussions before, met over lunch, even caught up a little bit before this. And Katarina is not new to tech. So we'll dive into actually why she's building what she's building here in a minute. But Arizona, how long have you been here, right? We're really wanting to spotlight people building in Arizona. So always curious, as kind of the first question, why Arizona?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I came to Arizona for high school and college. So I definitely stayed here for a while afterwards. But I think the biggest opportunity I got being in Arizona was that I was one of the first few hires at satellite offices in Phoenix for SF-based B2B SaaS firms.
Let's go.
That's definitely what kept me here, was those awesome opportunities. I worked for Gigya and Zenefits right out of college. Just did the traditional sales tech route. I think that's one of the best roles that you can start in a startup with, even without experience, as long as you can sell yourself in the interview. And then from there, I just kind of took off. But absolutely, my first experience after college here in those B2B SaaS firms was pretty addicting, and I wanted to stick here.
Two things there that I'll touch on and that I love that you mentioned. For a lot of people, and we were just discussing this, tech is actually easy, quote unquote, to get into. You just have to know where to get into it. Did you find those opportunities post-college by luck, by chance? How did you end up coming across those?
Actually, a little bit by luck.
Nice.
I did start in.
That's great.
Yeah, totally. You have to make your own. You have to be in the right place at the right time, right? You have to be doing the right things.
Luck?
Yeah.
Is that what you're gonna say? Yeah.
When the luck swings around to you, you have to already be doing the right things for it to reward you. So, of course, I'm not going to discount my own effort, but I got a job at GCU right out of college as an enrollment counselor, and pretty much immediately took a look around. Even the walls weren't my style. Immediately knew it wasn't for me. And I shared this with a colleague there that was just crushing it in sales, and female mentor, of course. And she was able to basically set me up with another woman that she had met during training that had the exact same experience as me. And she actually went to go work at Gigya. She was a manager at Gigya, and then this mentor at GCU was willing to introduce me, and that's how it all started. So it definitely was, even when I wasn't in the environment, it already was an in-network referral.
That's awesome to hear. I saw a tweet the other day, X post, whatever we call them these days. That was essentially, it was a partner at a large, well-known VC firm. But he was essentially saying, I don't know anyone in tech who's made it really big who wasn't some cold emailing monster.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
Right? Well, just what it sounds like.
It's completely true, because one, I sold myself the entire time that I was there. I was already in sales, so my sales abilities were speaking for me. That's what definitely got me the job. But three, the job that I got was a BDR, the absolute lowest rung of the sales outbound motion. And I think it gets a lot of flack. I think BDRs get, sometimes maltreated at companies, but they are the absolute lifeblood of opportunities. And if I hadn't cut my teeth in that first year in the BDR role, I absolutely wouldn't be where I am today, because that skill set has gotten me all of my leads today as a founder. When you start as a founder, your first job is BDR.
Yes.
Absolutely. Having a leg up really helped me there.
I love that you mentioned that, because that's the second point I was going to touch on, which was tech generally hard to get into. If you're not living in SF or NYC, to me, I think it's tough. And the reason I bring that up is, to this date, I've now worked as a VC, thrown tech events, and I work at a great startup, but none of that existed 3.5 years ago. I did not know what tech was 4 years ago. It wasn't until I got out to the coasts did grad school out on the East Coast in New York, that I even got the chance. And the BDR role is the magic pill if you're ready, right?
Absolutely.
To just take that leap and say, I can work for you, give me 18-hour days, I will cut my teeth to prove myself.
Yeah.
Very few companies in the world let you do it. I mean, Microsoft isn't going to say, yeah, you have no experience, kid, but hey, come on. Not these days, at least.
Yeah.
Whereas startups will give you that chance.
Yeah.
So for anyone looking to get into tech, all right, you're a shining example of luck meets skill, right? Luck meets preparedness.
Yeah. And I also, you mentioned like 18-hour days and grinding, and I love that. I think that's definitely for people that have skills to learn. But I also think that there are some people out there that you know who you are, like you are an overachiever. You already excel. Like startups are one of the only places where meritocracy can stand true. So
yes,
you can, even if you're a great BDR, you can work 4-hour days and leave early and still get promoted in a startup. Like that's something where if you are producing results, it's one of the few places where that will speak louder than some of those early relationships. Now, once you get higher up into the company, I think the relationships and your stakeholder management matters a lot more.
correct.
As a BDR, it's about performance, regardless of what you do outside of the office or how many hours you spend in the office. If you're performing, you're probably going to get promoted as a BDR.
No, yeah, I love that you bring that up as well, because to your point of meritocracy, startups just want A players. They don't care where they come from.
Absolutely.
Some on the coast might.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if a community college person can outsell a Stanford graduate, a Berkeley graduate, unless the CEO is extremely incompetent, they will take that community college. Right? Because you need results.
Absolutely.
Well,
Go ahead. If I can accomplish in 10 calls what someone else can accomplish in 100, absolutely. People want that. Even if it's, I'm calling at a different time of day, I'm using a different talk track, I'm calling a different person, I'm finding better numbers. There could be a ton of skill sets that get behind that difference in conversion, but totally, founders don't care if they know what's going to get them to the next level. They don't care about that. They just care about the results, and they're actually going to work backwards off of what you did to systematize it. They're hopefully going to just literally reverse engineer your work. They're going to promote you to do exactly that and teach other people to do the same thing. So totally, it's definitely a different kind of world in startups.
And I like it because you did this 10 years ago?
Yeah, about 12 years ago was my first BDR job.
And there is way more opportunity now.
Absolutely.
That's why I'm like, look, if you did it 10 years ago, obviously you're unique, very hardworking. The way I like to view things is if I can do it, someone else can, right? Someone else can step up to the plate, and there's more of the pie to go around today, even in Phoenix. So if you're, again, looking to get into tech, right now is a really good opportunity in Phoenix to cut your teeth, try to prove it. Whether it be a satellite office, a local startup. But at the end of the day, the hard work, the consistency and discipline is pretty much going to outclass anyone that you might come up against.
Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. I did not know you started from GCU to...
Yeah.
And that's another one, right? You took the time to meet your mentor's referral.
Totally.
I like to share a lot as well that the way I work at the company I do now, Inked Greetings, is I was working job in VC, finance, and in the evenings, right, post 5:30, 6 p.m., I live in Mesa, which is about a 30-minute drive from Phoenix, for those from, if you're listening from out of state, to give you an idea.
It's a 40-minute drive from South Phoenix.
Right. So just to give you an idea, so every day, because I would work from home, I'd drive from Mesa. After working my work from home job, from 6 p.m. when traffic is pretty much brutal either way, drive 35 minutes into the city to go to tech events, meet people, and try to see what I could make more of my career. And that's how I met the startup I work at now, which is phenomenal because sometimes a lot of those efforts, I feel like you feel like they're in vain sometimes.
Yeah.
But just keep showing up. Getting into tech, making it work isn't about just getting in the door.
Yeah.
You have to be an A player basically your entire life. Basically.
I think so too, and I think that's what separates the environment in San Francisco especially.
Yes!
Is that you are
Love that.
when you go to these networking events, there's not a chance that you'll meet someone in tech. You will only meet people in tech. You might meet someone doing a normal job. Like that's
Yes.
the rare thing that you will find there. But in SF, that's the thing, that you are always around startup people. And of course, you're going to be exposed to that. You're going to feel like you have your own network, your own community. You're going to be more predisposed to start your own startup, because the thing is that we don't need more startups in Arizona. We need more founders in Arizona, and they will naturally do what they do, which is build startups, because not everyone is going to succeed. So I don't want a startup. I want more founders in Arizona.
Thank you. Honestly, it's that same energy. I was introduced to startups because I went to grad school in New York and got the chance to meet a lot of them out there. And I've said this over and over and over, but I want to keep repeating it because I think it's that important. And it's that the energy, the pace with which startups move here in Arizona is too slow. We need to have that crazy, unsatisfiable. I don't even know if that's a word, right? That's probably not the right word. Unsatiable? Whatever.
Insatiable.
Insatiable. Thank you. It needs to be obsessive, and it needs to be in the right direction. I feel like we have a lot of the people who are a bit obsessive, but then the mentors that we have around here aren't telling them, hey, that's not a good idea. And
Or can you ship it in a week?
yes.
It's a good idea, but can you ship it in a week?
Yeah.
If it's a plan for 6 months from now, are you going to be here 6 months from now?
The somewhat controversial Elon Musk phrase, what did you get done this week? Right? What was it? I saw a tweet the other day as well that I really liked. I like a lot of the stuff that I find. Thank goodness it's not all just brain rot, right? But it was essentially, if by 11 a.m. at your startup you haven't moved the needle on something, you've wasted your day. And that just sets the tone of, well, if you did something in the afternoon, if you did something in the morning that was of note, top it in the afternoon, because little grains of sand. That's how startups beat each other out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Making progress every day. It's really not about the big wins.
Yes.
We only see the big wins, but
In the news.
absolutely. But the thing that was before that was just a bunch of no's, a bunch of failures, and more importantly, a ton of small wins that they then scaled, systematized, optimized to get the big win. It's just not nearly as sexy to talk about all the other stuff. Like, it's more exciting to talk about, of course, the massive valuation. But I really do agree. And I think in addition to startups moving a bit faster, I think to your point, it's the organizations that support startups around here. I absolutely love the new AVA, Arizona Venture Association, that just started, and their new goals in 3 years, the 550, 500.
I have questions about those.
Absolutely.
How close you are to them, but
I think the thing that I'm lacking there, though, is that if those are goals that you have in the next 3 years, exactly to your point, literally what did you do last week to make that happen?
okay, that was going to be it.
Yeah, because if you haven't done anything for the last 3 months to make that happen 3 years from now, it's not happening.
Well, those were my questions, Katarina, so I think we can discuss those
Yeah.
a little bit, which was, I saw some of their goals. By the way, at the Silicon Oasis, we're supporting everyone doing everything for startups. We honestly don't care how slow you move, but if you're helping someone at least once a week, right, moving the needle somehow for the ecosystem,
Absolutely.
honestly, come on here. If you've helped a founder, if you've helped, connect with the government that helped provide resources for founders, we'd love to have you on this show. To that point, right, I do have some questions for the AVA. Is it
Yes.
what's it called? And maybe you can help answer some of those, because I saw their goals and they sounded very ambitious, which is great. But also, they said they wanted to find, is it 5 unicorns? In
5
years?
unicorns. Yeah.
Did they find them 4 years ago?
Yeah, that's definitely my first question. And I think it's actually within 3 years. All these goals are within 3 years. So it's 550 and 500 within 3 years. And absolutely, that's my call out too, is it's great that you're doing this, but where are you pointing your efforts? And can you be more transparent about it so that the people around you that are already building in this direction can help push that forward? Because it's a ton of moving pieces. Of course, you might get there in a smaller group, but you're going to get way further and probably faster if you just share it with the ecosystem already here.
Agreed. And the biggest question, again, that you've helped explain more, which I love that we're on that same wavelength, is unicorns on average are 7 years old.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it was 8, but totally.
7,
8 something.
Is what it is.
They're already in existence. They're already out there. So what are the 25 to 50 that you've identified that will result in the 5? That has to exist if you picked 5.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's pretty much like an 80 to... If 95% of startups aren't going to make it, it's quite literally a 100 to 1 ratio. Mm-hmm. So that means that they need to have had already scoured 500 companies.
And seen something among those to tell them that these are the right goals to make.
Well, and not only that, that means that 5 of those 500 need to have had monumental, incredibly unrealistic growth that would have shaken the entire world.
Mm-hmm. Or they will.
Well, they should have. If they have to be, if they're...
They should already be 3Xing.
In the next 3 years, we should know their names.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Like, that's where I'm a little confused. Again, love the ambition.
Yeah.
But the math's not adding up. That means you would have had to have found them already, and you would have had to... Silicon Valley would have already been sniffing around, at least, the valuations for those, we would have heard about that already. Yeah. Unless it's a super duper duper secret, which maybe.
Right.
But...
Yeah, and most stealth mode startups aren't still building in stealth at that point. And then to your point, then they wouldn't have been in that original valuation of the 500. So I agree there should be more of that transparency, and I think the most exciting part of those goals was the $500 million in private investment, because that is something where I truly believe that organization has complete control over that.
Agreed, yeah. Love what they're doing, right? It was just, that's my biggest question. Sorry, go ahead.
Absolutely. I love what they're doing. I like the group they've assembled, but even there, I think there's something that we can learn from SF and Austin and these other cities, where there's some notable players that are missing. We've got, for example, the largest company in Arizona, Freeport McMoran. I never know how to pronounce it. But anyway, they're not at that table. Meanwhile, SF and Austin constantly have their biggest players at the table because you want them supporting the next generation of founders. I also noticed that we had a couple investment firms. We had Golden Seeds present at the AVA. There was also... Monsoon Venture Capital was present in AVA, but probably every single venture capital firm in Arizona should have a presence in there, or there should be one representative for all of them. Exactly, the coalition of it, not just one or two. So I do think there's incredibly promising signs.
Agreed, yeah.
And then there's lessons that we could take from SF and Austin to make some of those efforts even more impactful.
I've said that a lot as well, and I love that you're saying that too, which is, look, we don't have to wear the same suit as SF, NYC, but let's see what the cloth is made of.
Absolutely.
And then create our own model that works for Arizona. There is someone in the ecosystem, right, who came from SF. I like him personally. I'm not going to call him out because I don't know how much you'll like what I'm about to say. But I like that he says how Arizona is different because of the values it holds dear, and we should build our tech ecosystem around that.
Yeah.
Yes, we should be obsessive. Yes, we should want to make a lot of money because that's honestly what motivates founders. Yeah. But at the same time, it works because we can all be, all hold Arizona values. And again, I think you know who you are. Love that you say that. And I'd like to think that we at the Silicon Oasis are doing the same thing when we bring people together, trying to unite that ecosystem, which is, look, let's be selfless. Don't backstab each other. Don't badmouth each other. No one wins.
Yeah. I love that. I think especially reach out to your competition, be open with what you're doing, be honest with the opportunities where you guys align and where you don't, and draw those clear lines. Just be upfront and be transparent. That's the way to build.
To your point of the AVA, just being a little more transparent on who, what, when, where, how.
Totally. Yeah, this is what we're doing and this is not what we're doing. I think that's what's missing. Is this is not what we're doing in a lot of cases.
No, great call out.
Yeah, but I do also think, I love what you said about we need to put Arizona sentiments at the forefront. I think that's something that, especially right now, I think as we're seeing things on a federal level play out at a state level, I see a ton of opportunity for us here. When the investment in femtech, for example, was announced federally, the day after I saw on LinkedIn an Arizona-based startup laid off all of its employees. Oof. That's an immediate impact. Whether or not they rolled that back or paused it or whatever it is, those are Arizona families that now don't have income. That's an Arizona founder that now doesn't know the future of their business. And those are things that Arizona should care about today. Same thing with immigration. 50% of our school kids, the future founders in Arizona, are of Hispanic origin. we can't have them afraid to take some of that $500 million in private investment. Like, we need to encourage them to reach out to some of these programs and to private funding. So we really need to get involved, I think, in some of those things to make sure that Arizona values are up front, because it's going to help our entrepreneurship goals as well.
Yeah, being Hispanic myself, I have a whole lot of opinions on that. And it should be easier for just people in general to learn how to get into tech. I'm glad that we talked about that at the beginning, but more Hispanics need to be on LinkedIn. So Katarina, I like that you bring this up, because up until last year, I think, right, I had been in tech already for about 2.5 years, but I did not meet another Hispanic VC in that time.
Wow.
Which was interesting, because I don't remember. Okay, yeah, I met these two young women in New York at some WeWork event. And they invited me to this Hispanic only tech event in New York. It was during New York Tech Week, so we have there's hundreds of tech events everywhere. And it was just interesting, because I went there and you can see that same energy where it was just Hispanic people, it matched anywhere in SF, anywhere in NYC. Yeah. It just happened to be a coalition of
absolutely
darker people.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because the ambition, the outlines for business plans, everything was similar. So to me, it really is a matter of just getting a little more of that exposure into the hands of whatever you call it, right? It might be more minority-centered areas, whatever. I think everyone can have an equal bat. Maybe getting to the bat is a bit harder, but once they get there, I don't think they'll shun the opportunity. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Absolutely.
I mean, I totally agree with you. It's all about getting them to the plate.
Yes.
Because we did talk about this before the cameras were rolling, but totally there are, of course, different starting lines for everyone. So I think, to your point, if we can just get everyone to the bat, we know that women are going to succeed 2 times as often as men. Black women are going to succeed 2.5 times as often as white men. So there's quite a lot of things there that, to your point, as long as we can get them to bat, there's going to be great successes for us down the line.
We'll let the numbers speak for themselves at that point, huh?
Absolutely.
Awesome. So I've loved our conversation so far, Katarina. A lot of true things for people already in tech. Hopefully a couple of eye-openers for those who spent their lives growing up in it, where they say, oh, this was easy to get into tech. You just reach out to my uncle's brother and he had a startup, or he had a kid who worked at that's usually not how it works for most people in the world. So hopefully some eye-openers there, and avenues of entry to tech for those who didn't grow up in it. Totally. But with all that said, would love to learn. Tell the audience about what you do, why you do it.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you.
Of course.
So I offer revenue operations advisory services to B2B startups that are right around 100K and looking to scale to $1 million in ARR. And the reason this really excites me is I grew up as an immigrant, and even more importantly, as the daughter of entrepreneurs. So I definitely could see on a month-by-month basis, even what appears at the dinner table, the kind of vacations that we take.
I say that all the time. Every dollar counts.
Absolutely. Every dollar goes so far. I remember the months that we did well, and I remember the months that we did not do well. And for me, that kind of impact is what I'm looking to have. I don't think it's fair that VC-backed companies get millions of dollars to play around with and make mistakes. Meanwhile, we've got startups here with better ideas, but fewer resources that could do so much more, not just for Arizona, but for the whole country, for people in general. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is offering some of these tips and tricks that these $1 million guys are using to the underdogs. And I've been really, really excited and fortunate to work with some companies to see some awesome results. A couple of my clients are now vying for funding and feeling way more prepared. And I'm so excited about that. I came into this with about $30 million under my belt raised. My most successful round ever was $22 million.
Oh, solid.
Incredible. But I was so dismayed because as soon as we earned that money, according to a specific plan, and we shared exactly what we're going to use that money on, as soon as we got the check, we used the money differently. And that's not going to happen at the startups that I advise, because they're going to learn from those mistakes, because that company's not going to get the same funding next time. And it's just a real bummer to see that, unfortunately, that same financial due diligence is not present at the companies that really should be doing it more. So just bringing that to startups here locally has been so exciting for me and rewarding.
Thank you for calling out that behavior in startups, because as great as a lot of B2B SaaS companies are, I don't think we need a 30th Zoom recruiter filter that helps you. And this isn't to bag on the company itself. It's more to bag on how funding is being used, because that's 100%.
Absolutely. True. We don't need another ChatGPT wrapper.
Oh, I say that all the time.
We need new AI. 50% of all VC dollars last year went to AI technology. But again, in RevOps, I can tell the difference between good AI and a really good spreadsheet. And a lot of AI that's getting backed right now could be done by an incredible spreadsheet, by a great workflow. So I do think being true to the problem that you're solving and not trying to solve it in a specific way to garner funding is going to set some startups apart. I think we're going to start seeing which of those AI tools actually continue to grow in valuation and which ones falter. It's going to be easy to tell because they're the ones solving real problems.
There's been so many that I've seen in the news just wiped of value because OpenAI made an update. They
Absolutely.
just basically do what that startup did.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, with that much funding, you think that they would take care of a lot of the most commonly thought wrappers, if that makes sense.
It's interesting to see it because it's playing out within startups now. We're almost like cannibalizing ourselves. Whereas before, this is a common problem with a startup compared to an enterprise, right? So this happened to Slack. Slack had a massive heyday in 2020, 2021, 2022, and then Microsoft Teams came out and just if you look at the graphs of usership, Slack has, a nice hockey stick graph, and then Microsoft Teams comes out and it just completely blows it away.
Right.
And that's why startups need market share, and not just market share, they need velocity in their first few years.
Yes.
Otherwise, an enterprise person is going to copy it, or now another startup is going to copy you if they can do it better and faster.
One of the things I ask a lot of founders when I'm just helping them out with messaging, pitch decks, whatever, is early stage VCs are going to ask, why now? Why in 5 years? Why in 10 years? And what stops someone from doing this, 2 years from now, 4 years from now? And I think it's always interesting because their answers always seem to say, oh, we're the only ones doing this. And it's like, I don't care if you're based in SF or NYC or here.
You're not the only one doing it.
Yeah, that's not good enough. Or it's a super red flag when they say no one else, we have no competitors.
It's market research, absolutely. I heard someone say the other day, we have no churn. And I'm like, ooh, shh. Yeah. I'm like, no, that means you don't have data. Data. Please don't tell your investors that.
Right? Yeah. It's always that. I'm like, never say that out loud in an investor meeting.
Absolutely. Unless you have a graph and user insights to prove it, and clear reoccurring contracts and so much stuff that I'm helping them put together, because they truly haven't had churn in 3 years, but they cannot say comfortably that they will not have churn unless they have the data to prove it. And to your point, some of these outrageous comments, they actually, while you think they sound good, they actually encourage an investor to start digging a little bit beneath the surface.
Right.
What you want is basically to sound confident enough to just fly by the radar.
Honestly, yeah. That's so funny that you say that. I tell founders all the time, answer all their questions before they have them. At least the most common ones. Because by that time, their impression is going to be, wow, this kid isn't just asking for money, or this adult, whatever. They did their research. They know what they're talking about. And then the diligence they do should be rigorous, but it won't be, I'm trying to catch them lying to me, rigorous.
Yes, exactly. You'll notice immediately the difference in the questions. Totally. There's either going to be questions about the numbers that you put up on the slides. I would say at that point, your presentation was not clear enough. Mm-hmm. Or they're going to have questions about what got you into this, which theoretically you probably already told your story, but they'll ask more questions about some soft things in your business, like who are you working with? Why do you do this? What future do you see for yourselves? That's when you know that the VC is actually, they don't care about the numbers. They do, but they trust you enough to believe that those numbers are well researched. That's why they're not asking you about them.
Agreed. The first VC meeting, pretty much every time, the first 30 minutes are always going to be soft questions. Yeah. If you've sent them your deck ahead of time, then they're really just gauging, are you a good person? Can you work hard? Mm-hmm. Can you manage people that work hard?
Absolutely.
After that, they'll obviously dig into the numbers, right? the longer the meeting is, if they've only scheduled 30 and they go beyond, they probably like you. Some just have no idea what they're doing. But generally, you're right. That's how it goes. They'll try to gauge, are you a good person? After all the maths make sense, they just want to know if they can trust you.
Yeah, and sometimes I take issue with the maths making sense, because sometimes I still see, even at later stages, I still see VCs making investments that do not mirror the same due diligence that company would make for certain internal decisions. And what I mean by that is everyone that's worked at a company that has gotten funding has at some point thought, why did we get this funding? Like, I think most people in startups have worked at least one startup where they had that opinion, where it's like, what do they know that I don't as an internal employee? So I say all that to say that I think the CRM, the HubSpot, the Apollo, the Salesforce of startups, the data that's in there, those numbers are not being looked at, in my opinion, with sufficient rigor by VC firms. I do think that if they were, there would be some more successful startups that are making it that may have a lacking story, for example, but their CRM shows way better growth, way better numbers. And it really does come down to the stories still today.
I agree. If these multi-million, a lot of them dollar firms did their due diligence, you wouldn't have stories of fake users not being caught, just little things here and there that if I lost someone $50 million, I'm going to jail forever. But because it's some big bank, they're like, psh, we'll just arrest this. Whatever. Right? Yeah, and it's the Forbes 30 under 30 pipeline to prison, right? I don't know if you've seen that joke, but it's a terrible...
Yeah, or pipeline to layoffs, it's the same. It's going to affect...
mismanaged money.
Absolutely. If we did the same due diligence before hiring rounds as we do to justify layoffs, they wouldn't be there in the first place.
And it's great because you help with all that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Heck yeah, I do.
Not go to jail. No, just kidding. But above that, right? For a founder today that's just started their company or maybe is 8 to 10 months old, how can you impact them directly? Because I would love for them to, hear, she does this. They might be thinking, but it's Series A startups and beyond.
Yeah. No, I help with startups that usually have found between 5 to 10 at least of their first customers. Nice. That's when I can start helping you, because one, even when you already have an existing customer base, you should be planning for upsells and cross-sells. That's the first thing, is I'll help you build a customer success playbook that actually suffices for new business ARR. Companies that are established should have 30 to 35% of new business ARR come from existing customers. So we can start by looking at that. I can help by fixing leaky bucket syndrome, which usually starts from customer one. Yeah. And even more importantly there, we talked a lot about scaling and optimizing. I absolutely love to help my founders, identify their ICP so that they can actually scale the tactics that work for their ICP. Don't scale the tactics that work to get just any customer. Work to scale your niche and then grow from there. So a lot of these resources that I think founders unfortunately don't get until they earn their 3, their 4, their 5 years in business. That's what I help founders with. And I work on a milestone basis. So a lot of my founders feel really comfortable because nice. I don't get paid until I return results. And those results are, it definitely works out in everyone's benefit. Those results are always, they start with a revenue operations audit. Which is especially exciting to me because it's a way that I can give value to founders whether or not they want to work with me. This audit basically interviews people at your company, whoever you might have working with you, whether that's fractional, yourself, or full-time employees. I look at your existing CRM. Some people are still in Sheets. It's totally cool. That's fine. There's data to be had. We'll look at in-app usage, all that kind of stuff. And then my RevUps audit actually shows you which lever to pull. Because that's the thing, is that founders are really kind of obsessed with thinking that they need to have the next best, greatest idea. But in this stage, you actually just need to avoid the bad ones. You need to pick a few solid things that most repeat founders know, and then just avoid the bad decisions. And that's what's going to get you to year 2 and year 3. And then later on, absolutely, how you use your customer insights is going to help you have that next greatest, best idea. But really, I do revenue operations advising for companies under $1 million. That's where my bread and butter is. And the goal is always to get them to 1 million and then hand off to a full-time ops person that you're going to need at that point.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that. Very encompassed everything that I think most people would have questions about.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to. And you'll probably also hear a lot of talk about LinkedIn if you work with me. But that's a surprising thing. I think LinkedIn has been an absolute boon. I would be remiss to not tell any founder that's listening to start posting on LinkedIn. Yeah. I know it seems like an echo chamber in there, but that's because only 3% of LinkedIn users post on LinkedIn.
That's across platforms, right? TikTok, Instagram is just 2% of users dominate 90% of content.
Absolutely. But this is interesting here because on LinkedIn, and meanwhile, you have less people posting, but clicks per post are going up.
Right. Yes.
It's a massive opportunity. I would recommend any founder that doesn't have a marketing budget and is just trying to cobble together whatever leads they can to be more active on LinkedIn. You already have expertise. You already have thoughts to share, and get on there and follow me, and I'd be happy to interact with all your posts.
Nice. Now, I know we're coming up on time here, Katarina. Thank you for sharing, by the way. Amazing.
Of course.
And you help founders in where? Just in Phoenix? Are you kind of a remote operations?
I do remote operations across the United States.
There we go. Y'all know now where to go.
Absolutely.
Last question that we'll kind of cover here is Arizona. Just what could it do better? Being based here, having been here for a while now, what do you think we can really use some help with?
That's a great question. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I think we need to get our big players at the table. We need to get the Freeport Mac brands. We need to get the SRPs at the table, just like we have, for example, ASU. ASU has been a massive player. I think that's been great for bringing founders into this space. I personally am a benefactor of the ASU Venture Devils program 10 years ago. Nice. So programs like that really, really help and impact future founders.
I found inked greetings through an Invest You pitch event.
Yes, I love it. Stuff like this is really what moves the needle. Yeah. Absolutely. So even, Josue, you mentioned earlier, just attending the networking events, taking the time after work to go totally is something that sets you apart. Absolutely. Yes, you have to show up if the state is going to start offering these things.
Correct. Yeah.
But two, we also touched on this, but we need to apply some of these startup principles of building while in motion, of velocity to some of these government entities that are now getting involved to help us. There's a ton of organizations that are really, really active right now, and I love what they're doing. But if they can move faster, especially those $500 million, for example, in private investments over 3 years, it's now been 2 or 3 months. So, for example, a plan of how those investments are coming out or already distributed funds is something that we should be seeing.
That's a great question.
It needs to not happen at the end of the 3 years. It needs to happen now. So I think speed, absolutely above all else, is probably what Arizona needs.
Loved that you said building while in motion.
Yeah, build the plane.
I don't think we have that natural instinct here in Arizona where it's you have momentum, but you're supposed to be building so much more during that momentum to just keep hockey sticking that growth.
Absolutely.
And that's for everything, right? Government participation, tech, whatever, events and community, startup building. Yes. We need that everywhere.
And you're so right that this is something that we can't deny that communities like San Francisco naturally have because founders are around other founders that build this way. They hear this all the time. And I even think, again, back to being a child, back to watching my parents build their businesses, I wish that I had this knowledge that I had today back then, because I saw it even then that they would hold back the value that they had to offer because it wasn't quite polished enough yet. It wasn't in a perfect workshop or it wasn't in the right product. And you have to understand as a founder that what you launch today will not be what the product is going to look like 3 or 5 years from now, even 6 months from now. That's why you have to be comfortable launching it today. If you have any value to offer, someone will buy it today. You have to believe that. And if you don't, meet with people like me or Josue, come to Silicon Oasis and talk to people that believe this, because there is a lot more risk in waiting and sitting on your product than going out there and selling it today.
Love it, Katarina. Echo everything you said right now, especially the part, or I love specifically the part that said, look, your product's not going to be ready. when Inked Greetings launched their first kiosk, November of 2023. The first one that came in.
So recently.
Right.
Wow.
But it was, in the own founder's words, it was just not good. A lot of things didn't work about it.
Totally.
And we still launched into a mall. Right?
That mall still wanted your business.
Yeah, it did great over the holiday season. It did phenomenal. And the funny thing is, when I joined the team in May of last year, 2024, we had one kiosk, which was that one, pretty much just in the field. And we're on the third or fourth iteration now. Okay. In, again, 1 year. Yeah. We're in 78 locations across 27 states.
Wow.
So you said it, right? And you hadn't even heard this update yet, which was, look, it's not going to be ready. Execute, move, improve, and just keep going at it.
Absolutely.
Have some belief, get out there. Like Katarina said, it's a two-way street. And part of what she mentioned as well, what we're trying to do at the Silicon Oasis, unite everyone, give them that environment. And if you're building and no one's heard about you, please come onto the show.
Absolutely.
We want to tell your story.
Yeah, I love that. Great.
Well, anything else that you wanted to add, Katarina, before we kind of close up here?
No, this has been wonderful. Please go ahead and find me on LinkedIn. Katarina Lujic, Lujic. My company's name is Lujic Group, LLC. But please go ahead and just find me on LinkedIn, reach out. I'd love to chat with any startup founders, whether or not you want my services. These kind of conversations really fuel me, and they always give me ideas for my own startup, of course. So don't hesitate to reach out. We've already said it here, but whatever we can create in this ecosystem will come back to us. So, of course, I'm happy to offer mentorship to anyone that is interested in RevOps or in starting a business or just in tech startups. Please don't hesitate to reach out. We're all here for you.
And ditto to everything she said. Thank you so much, Katarina, for coming on today, for your insights and for your time.
Totally. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. Till next time.